If you're on TRT and you go to 300 test. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Blood, Sweat, and Gear with coaches Scott McNally and Andrew Berry. We are skipless today. Skip's not with us. He went out and did another podcast, Andrew. What's up with that?
Yeah, I guess we're just, we're small fry compared to Skip and his podcast requests. He's actually on with Jeff Black today. And anyone who knows Jeff's a great bodybuilder. He's a hardworking guy. He's getting ready for the Universe, I believe, in a few weeks. I think that's what he's doing is the Universe. Okay. I think he's doing a qualifier like maybe this week and then the Universe next week. But yeah, he's a Masters guy, good bodybuilder.
Right on. That's what Nick Vocolo is doing. Yeah, I know you saw my guy who won everything in the show, and I think you had a guy. Thank you. You had a guy too that won everything in the show too this past week, didn't you?
He won everything except the Open Classic. He's a Masters guy, but he won his Classic class. He won the Masters overall. He won the men's physique overall. He won the Masters men's physique. He won it all, like except for the Open Classic to a guy who's just a little bit better, younger, fresher physique. But yeah, we're getting ready to do the Universe in a couple weeks as well.
Okay.
Did you say your guy's doing it?
Yeah. So Nick is a bodybuilder, and last minute, like literally the weekend, one weekend out, he's like, Nick, how tall are you? I think we can make a classic. Let's see what your weight class is. I feel like you have a classic physique. He's light heavyweight, and 5'9.5", and he was like 198 at the time. So we look and 198 was the cutoff, I think. So
yeah,
we're like, okay, yeah, let's try this. He didn't even know. He's like, well, what are I going to do different? I was like, well, you don't have to do as many poses, Yeah,
nothing.
So on top of that, now I didn't know this. This was like the Pennsylvania State Championships. There was 2 shows that were running simultaneously. Yes. Okay. So we entered in both. So he ended up winning his class in the other show, winning his classic class in the other show, and winning the Masters in the other show. And then for the Pennsylvania State Championships, he won his class and the overall. He ended up with 12, whatever it was, he ended up with 12 trophies for this thing.
I saw that picture. That's wild.
It's nuts, man. What's your guy's name?
Which one?
The guy who just did this, won the men's physique and all
Tim
that.
Wright. Tim Wright.
Yeah,
okay, Tim Wright.
Cool.
Yep. Yeah, he'll be doing Open, Masters, men's physique, and classic at the Universe.
That's cool. Oh, you can Open, Masters, men's physique. Wait, say that again.
He'll be doing both Open and Masters in classic and men's physique.
Okay, I didn't realize you could do both at a show like that.
Dude, it's the NPC. You think they're going to turn away an extra $350? Come on. That's why. I mean, no, seriously, that's why they, there was one year at the Universe, this woman did like 6 classes and she won like 4 or 5 of them. Yeah. She did like Open, she did 35 plus, she did 40 plus, she did 45 plus, and she might've even done bikini and figure or something like that. She was in we saw her 6 different times. Right.
Okay.
And it's like, you got to play your odds, right? You're bound to get one of those classes. But no, they absolutely let you do that because, the NPC got wise a few years ago, especially when Classic came around. And they said, well, wait a minute. We're definitely going to open this up to crossovers because the person's already here. They're going to shell out an extra $350 or $325 or whatever it is. And the North Americans one year had 1,800 entries, I think it was, right? But it was only 1,300 competitors. So there was somewhere around 500 crossovers. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
well, listen, we've got a short topic, and then we've got a bunch of listener questions to knock out. IGF, and even more specifically, if we want to get into IGF LR3, we mentioned on the previous episode, man, I think it's making a comeback. I first heard about it circa 2005. So it's literally almost 20 years later. I should say I first found it available around 2005. And now 20 years later, almost, it's like I hear people talking about it like it's this brand new thing, and people have been asking us, what do you think about IGF? Is this great? And I know that some people are doing videos on it too. I haven't seen these videos, but I know some people have been talking about it, and people are interested to know. I can share my experiences because I used a lot of it at one point, and I'd be curious to hear what you have to say too. We talked a little bit about it before, but have you used it, first of all?
Yes.
Okay.
I've used DES. I've used LR3. There was one time actually when me and Matt Porter were going to go in and buy a whole bunch of Increlex about maybe 8 or 10 years ago. And then we both decided not to because it was just like we both needed to put up like $6,000 at once because the guy wanted to sell like 20 boxes of it or something like that. It was either take it all or take none of it. Yeah. So we were talking about buying it and splitting it up. But he was kind of at that point where he was doing his TRT plus experiments. And I think in the back of his mind, he was like, I know I'm going to get into bodybuilding hardcore again. So he was thinking about stockpiling it. But no, like I never pulled the trigger on it. And what I'm getting at is that would probably be the only IGF related product I would use at this point. Reason being, and yes, I used LR3, probably 2 different 3-month cycles. I think what I saw out of it was more placebo effect than anything, because when you try a new compound, especially when you think it's like going to be the next holy grail thing
and it stings,
you look for those results, right? You look for like, oh, I'm a little tighter and oh, my arms are freaking growing, or because I believe the dosing protocol, and correct me if I'm wrong, but because it's been so long, it's one of those compounds where I've kind of shut the door on and not thought about much lately. But I believe I was dosing something like 50 micrograms bilaterally. Like, so if you're training arms, you're doing, a shot in right bicep, a shot in the left bicep. And I believe it was like, I might have started with like 25 micrograms and then ramped up to like 50 micrograms over the course of the cycle. And I gotta be honest, I didn't really see much out of it. The only thing I did see was I felt like I went hypoglycemic fairly often while using it. That was the main. Yeah, that was the main side effect that I saw. In terms of real, actual growth, I don't believe. I don't think. I really don't think. But then, who's to say? Because when you're taking it, I was running probably a healthy cycle at the same time. So it's hard to say if I saw anything at all. I'm thinking I didn't see much in the way of results with it.
Yeah. So here's my thought. Now, I'd run it a lot. I can't count how many times I ran it, but it was a bunch of times. And I would say that. So first of all, what is IGF? It's a growth factor, right? And when we take growth hormone, we get a conversion that we are then building our IGF levels up. This is just IGF, right? And the straight IGF, like Increlex, that's just like the pure thing, versus LR3 is supposed to have a longer half-life in your system, from what I understand, right? The way I remember dosing it was starting lower, tapering up, and I got into it deep, like combining it with growth hormone, combining it with insulin, and I had this whole timing system by the last time I took it. I stopped using it bilaterally, first of all. Okay. I just took it. I figured that it's getting in my system, and I'll rotate the shots, and I just would put it in one delt, then put it in the other, or put it in one tricep, next day put it in the other. The way that I liked it the most was I would use it literally right before I trained. So I'd get in the gym and I would take it like in the gym bathroom or in the car before I trained, and then immediately hit the floor. And there is that, like you said, you'd go hypo. There is that insulin like factor to it. I do think that you do get better storage. Now, I've wondered if there is a place for it. Maybe that place could be in a contest prep where you wanted to create more fullness. I think you can get more fullness out of it. I do think that happens. I don't think it's the game changer that people say or people think that it is, or what it's been reported to be. I mean, like it is the IGF from our growth hormone that makes us like grow muscle, right? That's where the hyperplasia comes from, is from having higher IGF levels. I don't see it translating though. I don't. And the way I understood it is that with dosing direct IGF LR3, that you will build up antibodies or something along those lines, and that's the reason why you don't want to go crazy with it. You keep the doses lower. So I think it was like I would do 30 micrograms for a week, and then 60 micrograms for a week, and then stop for a week or something along those lines.
Yeah, and getting back, I think that the reason why, at least in my time frame when I was younger and using it, that I thought it was going to be like this next level compound for me that was going to get me to another place was knowing that compounds like straight IGF-1, Increlex, knowing that some of these top pros like Nasser, for instance, was famous for using a lot of it. He's also no longer here today, which might, also be something to said about it. But, I think I was in my mind expecting something similar to that. And I think it was also presented as like this next big thing.
It was.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the peptide manufacturers did a really good job of promoting their products that way. And I think stuff happens in cycles in our sport. We're talking about other compounds that we've already kind of shut the door on for a number of years, or different theories or different ways to do cycles. I think it's just kind of coming around full circle again. And I do know that like some good guys are doing videos. I read a comment that Vigorous Steve did a video on IGF LR3, I believe. Okay. I haven't seen it, but I did read one of our comments on YouTube that someone had mentioned it. I'm keen to watch it. I want to. I want to look that up and see.
Also, too, though, I think that like Steve's perspective isn't always like, "Hey, this is what's going to work for you," but to say like, "Hey, here's some theoretical stuff, and here's what some science says, and here's what this should do." But and I don't know if he's giving it his seal of approval. I would say, like I said, I saw some additional fullness, and the way I tried to use it was stacking it with growth hormone. My thought was to use it to try to get my IGF levels even higher. And at the time we weren't doing testing and stuff like that. So I hadn't looked. I'd be curious if any of our listeners are using IGF. I'd be curious to know, like, what are your IGF levels and what are you seeing out of it? I think there's something to it, but I don't think it's worth it. The other thing is and this goes along with growth hormone to an extent. Dr. Rhonda Patrick had done a ton of research on IGF. And just IGF alone, she said that there were mice studies that showed that these mice would age more rapidly. If they had high IGF levels, that they would have a better quality of life, but their lives would be shorter. So it's a trade-off, is what she called it. The IGF trade-off is that if you have low IGF levels, you'll live longer, but you won't have as much muscle mass. You won't be able to carry yourself through the world to the same extent that you can with high levels, but these lives were shorter. Dr. Eric Serrano had talked about it once, saying that so when we normally we have cells in our bodies that mutate, and when they mutate, our bodies recognize that and they die, versus if that cell continues to grow, then that's called cancer. So our bodies know to just X that out. But if we have enough IGF in our system, that IGF may make a cell that would have mutated and died continue to grow while it's mutating. And that when we take growth hormone through the cascade of hormones that occur to create that IGF, that IGF, the way he put it, was something about like having a series of checks and balances. That IGF will have a series of checks and balances, whereas if you just use IGF unfettered on its own, then you don't have that same protective mechanism in play. I'm not a scientist. I'm not trying to present this as if I am, but I can tell you that somebody who's really smart did say that.
I would be interested for one of your next Muscle Minds, you and Scott, to dive into this topic. Because me and him have had some good conversations, mostly him teaching me about, growth hormone, the different, molecular weights, all that kind of stuff. But then also I would love to hear his point or his view on IGF LR3, IGF DES, if he used it, and the science behind it,
I'd be interested in that too, if he has any insight into it. We did get asked this on the last episode too. This is Katrina. She said, is there more benefit to women with IGF?
IGF or IGF LR3? I guess.
Yeah, I guess what was your answer last episode? Because she might not have heard it, and others might not have heard that either. Was growth.
Well, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'm just trying to think though why if and why there would be a more beneficial use for IGF or IGF related products for women over men. Maybe because of, what we alluded to in that last episode, most women do not want masculinizing side effects. They do not want virilization, PEDs, all the anabolic androgenic steroids could potentially cause that. Whereas, your IGF, your growth hormones, your insulin, other peptides, they don't have those characteristics of side effects. So there could be a place for them. Absolutely. I'm just trying to think if there's a reason why maybe beyond the side effect thing, why they might respond to it better than a male would. And off the top of my head, I can't think of anything, but you better believe I'm going to start thinking about this more and doing some research later on. So maybe we'll follow up on that one down the road.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to hear, like you said, I'd be curious if Scott's with us. Scott, this is a call to you, man, because I think that we could use some insight, and the community could too, because there is a lot of question going on around this. We do have a bunch of listener questions, though, and we have a bunch of them. You going to say something else, though?
I was going to say if someone wanted to send me a whole bunch of LR3, I'll run it again and give it a shot. And I should also say when I was using it back then, I was using insulin and growth hormone and, a good amount of PEDs at the same time. So it's just hard to say, like, did it do? I guess the only way to really get this right would be to maybe just do a TRT level of testosterone and then incorporate it after you have a baseline set of growth and how you're looking and everything. Incorporate it and see if you see any changes,
Yeah, and Katrina, we talked about that on the last episode, saying growth hormone. We aren't sure about IGF LR3, but I will say that growth hormone in itself, that is going to be, because she was saying she was thinking about how males can smash androgens when women need to be more careful. Yeah.
Yep, yeah. I agree. Yep, 100%.
I'll just grab some listener questions here. We'll ramp through these guys. By the way, if you enjoy our content, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell. We have several bodybuilding podcasts that come out each week. We'd love to have you along for all of them. So this guy says, I don't compete, and I've always done my mass phases with all tools, food, hard training, and PED cycles. But when I come off, turns into maintenance, pray I don't lose gains phase, so I don't change my food enough to burn a large amount of fat. So would it be better to do like a competing bodybuilder, to have an off season where you push the food, training, and stay on TRT dose, and then do a cut and push the PEDs at that time? So do the cycle while lower calories in TRT during massing. It seems like competitors really transform their bodies post-show and become more refined with the more shows they do.
I think this person would be like a good mentee for Skip, because Skip always, if you talk to him about his personal approach to bodybuilding, he's kind of always in what he would call like a pre-contest type phase in terms of how he structures his diet. He cardiovasculars kept in. He stays very lean. I know he's told us he's either all the way in or he's all the way off. If he's not doing bodybuilding for a while, he's not taking PEDs. He's going to the gym haphazardly. He's not tanning, which is a big one for him.
It is a big mental thing for him, isn't it? Like, I think when he tans, it's like it gets him thinking about his physique, doesn't it?
Tanning, it's just part of his program of being a bodybuilder, and when he's doing that, right? And why I think that this person would be like a good mentee, or Skip would be a good mentor for him, is because it sounds like this guy, maybe I'm reading it wrong, but he's losing a lot of his progress as soon as he goes off, because he's not doing something right with his diet or his approach. And I don't know how old he is. I don't know if he said that. Did he?
I don't think he did. Let me see if I can pull that back up. No, but I got the vibe he wasn't young.
That's where I'm going with it too. It sounds like he probably needs to stay more in a phase where he looks like a bodybuilder in terms of, he's got separation in his shoulders and pecs and arms and clear lines in his abdominals, and I think he'd be a lot happier long term. And maybe pushing food during his mass phase doesn't mean pushing food to the extent that he has previously. He might only stay within 10 pounds of, where he would consider like an in shape look, but he's also not having to drop, 20, 30 pounds or not lose that weight and see some of the muscle mass decrease as he goes off cycle, and then feel like he's just kind of spinning his wheels and not necessarily progressing year to year.
I think he's saying that he's not losing fat. He never really gets into, I think he's wondering if I might be, so he said, yeah, when I'm done with my mass phases, I don't lose gains. Okay. It was the way he worded it. But the vibe I get too is he's wondering that if he were to diet down and do a full blown cut cycle, that if that may help his future, because then he's seeing these guys who compete, they end up looking more refined as they progress.
Okay. So then why doesn't he maybe structure his diet or his plan like in the course of a year? He's got his mass phase where he's running cycle, training hard, training heavy, PEDs, eating all the food. And then he has a maintenance phase, right? And which is also his clean out phase. Yeah. And then he runs his next phase as more of a contest prep, just like you're doing a contest. Like let's say you got a 15-week cycle, a 10-week cruise, and then you go into another 15-week cycle. But this 15-week cycle is more in a caloric deficit, cardiovascular. Compounds might change a little bit with the goal of getting tighter, leaner, drier, harder. And then he can kind of go through that full experience. It sounds like that's what he's missing, is he's not using PEDs while dieting, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Yeah, he doesn't really think too much of the diet phase. He gets focused. He focuses on growing, and then he stops, and he's just kind of blah.
Yeah, I'll be the first to say I think my best progress is in a contest prep. You know, I didn't really hit the PEDs all that hard in the off seasons. I mean, here and there over the years, but especially as I got older, I was more of like a 300 test, 300 primo all off season. And then 20 weeks out from a contest, that's when I would really start ramping things up. And I felt like I grew my best in several different phases, from maybe 12 weeks out to 6 weeks out. I could just see myself volumizing. And then I always had to go through a phase where I felt like I shriveled right up just to get all that last bit of fat off. But once we're in shape, and then we might, bump the growth hormone up, or we might change the compounds a little bit and be in a position to add food. I felt like I had a whole nother volumization phase where I stayed just as tight, and the scale might go up 7, 8, 9 pounds, and it was all just visually muscle.
And think about when you get to that phase where everything's going to the muscle. Think about you get to that phase, and then you have a big meal, and you just boom, fills you out. You visually see
You're a sponge.
Yeah, you really are. And I do think that you become more receptive at that time. I pulled this picture up a little recently, and I just sent it to a client today, because we were talking about how you don't necessarily need to be in a huge surplus to grow muscle. Now, this guy, good friend of mine, Vache, he's not a huge guy, natural men's physique competitor. This is the left was before a contest prep, before he started dieting. The right is, I think it was 7 weeks or 8 weeks post diet. Now, keep in mind, this guy had to diet hard. He generally has to go to keto. But this was a before and after contest, probably a similar body fat composition, I'm guessing, but maybe a little bit leaner, But I mean, he definitely looks like he recomped in the process,
Oh, I mean, he's got a bulging tricep. You can see all three heads of the deltoid, whereas before it's just kind of like a uni arm, I guess, for lack of a better word. Just
pec changed.
This looks like a really good phase for him.
And that
he did it during his contest prep.
Yeah, because I mean, we know that didn't happen in the 6 weeks post show or whatever,
Exactly.
But you do get to see it fill out. After the show, that's when you're able to eat enough. Where now you really see. I feel like I always made a lot of progress in contest. There's no question about it. So,
I mean, there's also something to be said about people taking everything 100% seriously when they're in prep, because they know they're going to be judged 3/4 of the way naked on a stage in front of their friends, family, people they know. So, they're not missing a meal. They're not adding to their meals. They're hitting every step. They're hitting every cardio session. They're training like they're going to be judged. So there is something to be said about that as well. But yeah, I still think that I did my best growing during contest preps.
All right. Now I think that's something to to be aware of for everybody listening that's focusing on trying to grow as much muscle as they can, being responsive. Like, think about that insulin sensitivity that you have to have in that phase. I think that that's a big part of it too, All right. This is kind of we're going to take a different spin on this one. This is, Andrew took a screen cap of this post that was in our group. And the poster had said he skipped leg day for the last 10 years. And it was a picture he took of some random dude out on the streets. And the guy obviously doesn't have any legs. But I know you had kind of an interesting spin on this topic, Andrew.
Yeah, and I don't want to beat up, I think it's Bohan. I hope I'm saying that right. Because other people in the group did, and they were a little bit more aggressive about it. And my stance was, I just wanted to remind him and other people that might, take shots at people that aren't in our bodybuilding world, that not everybody cares about muscle. Not everyone wakes up every day thinking, how am I going to put another inch on my arms? How am I going to hit the gym today? We kind of live in our bubble with, my Instagram's full of bodybuilders and physique athletes. So that's what I see. But then also, like, in the real world, you go to a shopping market, the majority of people are overweight and whatever. Sure, would they like to be bodybuilders, or would they like to, quote unquote, build their bodies? Absolutely. But it's just not a priority level to them like it is to us. And I don't think we should be taking pot shots at them. Like, if it's your buddy and he's just got shit calves and you guys have been training together for years and it's something you've been joking around together about for years, that's one thing. Right. Yeah. But I just think taking pictures of random people in public and making fun of them for their lack of leg development when, this guy might have a spinal injury. Or like I said, he might just not give a damn about building his body up at all. Not everyone has the same priority structure that we do in terms of how we go about life.
Yeah. Now, if the dude had a light heavyweight upper body and no legs, then we could rip on him. You know what I mean?
That's it. Yeah. If he's walking around in a tank top and he's got these bulging chest and shoulders and then these sticks for legs, that would be more appropriate. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Here's a fun one from Mike Hatch, and this is from Patreon. Thank you guys for Patreon. Appreciate all your support. He says, whatever show this works for, I think it'd be great for us. How about facial hair for competition or clean shaven? Doesn't matter. And he also asks, using a pump formula before going on stage. If so, how much time before you go up? Thanks for all the info.
The facial hair one, I don't think really matters all that much, as long as it's kept, right? We're not talking wild man beard that's covering most of your chest, but if most people have like what Scott has right here, no,
or ask Chris Bumstead.
I was just going to say Bumstead or even Nate. Nate he's got a full beard when he goes on stage. It's manicured or whatever you want to call it. It's trimmed up all nice. It's not, it's not distracting. I think things that are distracting from your physique, that's what kind of might mark you down. And I'm thinking more of tattoos. If you have a full arm tattoo, and you're doing your side chest on that arm tattoo side, it is going to blur some of the conditioning a little bit. Or guys that have their whole back just done up and you can't see the level of conditioning that they brought because of the obscurity of the tattoo ink. I think that's more of an issue than a trimmed beard or even a weird hairstyle. So you see some crazy people do some weird hairstyles, these crazy mohawks or whatnot.
You always see the one woman with pink hair, that's competing.
Yeah.
There's always going to be the one lady that has the pink hair, and sometimes for her, it might work for her. She might be completely jacked and pull it off. It's part of her look, Yeah,
I think it depends on what class you're into. I have yet to see a women's bikini competitor win a pro card, I think, with pink hair, Now, if you're a women's physique competitor and a lot of girls have that shaved side thing and, that kind of fits your personality. It fits the look you're bringing. I think that's fine. Yeah. And then on the pump product.
I'm with you. I'll add too, you mentioned tattoos. Have you ever noticed sometimes when people try to cover them up, they make it even worse?
You're putting another layer on the physique, right? Yeah. And this goes with also putting too much tanner on, putting too much oil on. You're putting another layer on the physique, which can obscure that conditioning. Absolutely. Yeah. I see it all the time when someone does it. That's why I tell guys not to do it. Yeah. Girls, especially in the softer classes where that level of hardness isn't the same as, say, a men's classic physique or men's physique or bodybuilder needs to bring.
Right.
I would tend to say, yeah, it might be a good idea if it's just a really wacky tattoo that draws your attention away from the flow of the physique. On a guy, though, I'd tend to say don't try to do the cover-up thing.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. So you had that other one about the pump formula. You're going to dive into that next.
Yeah, do you use a pump formula?
I never have needed to. I've had people who've had one, and we did the Michigan State the other week, a couple of weeks ago. I had a client in that, and he was like, "Hey, I got this pump formula with me. If you think we need it." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And I was open-minded to it. Like, if I felt like backstage it looked like we could use it, I'd be totally down to add it. But I didn't feel like we needed it. I felt like we got him where we needed to be without it. I wouldn't be against it, but it hasn't been something that I'm like, you got to use this.
Yeah. My stance on it is like, I don't want to introduce something like that. That's not going to be the first time you're taking that product in this prep, right? I want to know that if you drink that product, you're not going to suddenly have like gastric distress or something like that. So it's something that's been, it's something that's been part of their protocol, pre-workout. I do want a non-caffeinated one. I want, the regular stuff, agmatine sulfate and arginine and that kind of stuff. I use, and I have clients I recommend, if they've been using it during prep, Granite Supplements, Vasoblast. It's a non-stim pre-workout product. But then more frequently, what I will do is have people be using Cialis for the pump.
Yeah, I'd go there.
And this is more part of their protocol daily already as it is, 10 milligrams of Cialis a day, also good for keeping your blood pressure in check, but also just getting that nasty pump in the gym. I would be more apt to just use the Cialis first, and then Cialis and the Vaso or a pump product if that's something they've been using. But again, I think like what you said, when you're backstage with that person and you're seeing them, you're like, what are we gonna improve on? You're already pumped. Everything looks the way we want it to look. I don't think we're going to get any more pumped up or fuller using this product. You're vascular, everything's popping. I agree with you. It's more of like a game time situation.
We did add a half a cookie in about 15 minutes before he went out. I was like, he had these cookies, and they were like the shortbread cookies with like the thick frosting on them. And he had them for after the show, and I was like, you know what? He looked like he needed just a little more, something fast, So I was like,
how many did you have?
I ate 2, I think. I was like, eat a half of one of those cookies and get me one of those too. They're good cookies, by the way. Thank you, Justin.
Isn't it funny what pops out of the Arsenal bag when you're backstage with a client? You're like, I didn't tell you to bring those, but okay, you can throw have a half of that donut or have it is funny. You can always count on competitors to bring some of their goodies backstage because maybe they're going to eat them as soon as they get off stage, or maybe we could use it before we bring you out there.
You know what, too, I'll say is I remember Mike Davies saying that, like, any food that you eat, you see people that are eating a bunch of food backstage, and it's not going to make any difference. That food's got to take all that time to transit. I do think there's an element of keeping your blood sugar up. And I think that you can, with fast-acting carbs, I do think that you can make a difference in that last 15 minutes. I really do.
With what Mike Davies is saying, I would agree if we were talking about like a chicken and rice meal, right?
Yeah.
Which is much more complex, or, steak and potato. Yeah, that should have been consumed 2 to 3 hours before, getting on stage. Absolutely. And you will be digesting that hours later. It's not going to touch you on stage. But I agree with you. Like simple things, Rice Krispie treats, candy even.
The classic rice cake.
Yeah, the rice cakes even, John Meadows was big on Nutri-Grain bars. He loved doing Nutri-Grain bars for himself because, he had a really, his digestive system wasn't great. So he found that those worked really well for him. And so that's what he would eat backstage.
Huh, okay. That's interesting. It's a good question. That was a fun one. Let's see what else we got here. Another one, Jason Franklin says, let's hear the BSG guys talk on pull-ups. Traditional wide grip, hammer or neutral grip, and close grip, or what I've always called the chin-up. Form suggestions. Any benefits over just using the lat pull-down machine with different bars, bands to increase rep range?
Well, I think 9 out of 10 people that train with weights are probably going to go towards that lat pull down simply because it does feel like an easier exercise, right? And that's not to say that pull-ups don't have a place in your training. In terms of like the width of your arms, and this goes for pull downs as well. I've seen a bunch of studies where in terms of the activation of the muscle being used, it didn't really make that much of a difference if your hands were, I'm showing for people that are listening, 10 inches apart versus 15 inches apart versus 16, 18 inches apart.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a conflicting study out there that shows the opposite, but that's probably that's the latest one I read, at least, and it was a couple of years back. So when people are programming, whether it's pull-ups or pull-downs, I tell them to go with the arm position, the hand position that feels most comfortable on their shoulders, because a lot of us, as we're older, we have shoulder impingement issues. Trying to do something ultra wide, it just doesn't feel right. It scrapes. It just doesn't feel good. I tend to go with basically just a straight shoulder width grip. Now, in terms of bands and doing pull-ups, I absolutely love to use bands when I do pull-ups, and it's not to make it easier. It's not to get more reps. It's so that my feet stay directly underneath me, because as you watch people do their sets, their feet start to swing forward more, and they're almost doing more of like a partial row as they're pulling versus going straight up and down. So I use the band because it allows me to keep my feet straight underneath me. And yes, I do get more reps doing it that way too.
Of course. We used to do, when we trained at Royal Oak Gym, Shelby's crew, with doing John Meadows programs. When John was sending the programs out, John had like this, like, I don't know what he called it, but it was like the pull-up of death gauntlet, or, something crazy like that.
Oh, yeah.
Where I can't remember if it was like 6 sets. I think, yeah. Okay. So it was 2 sets wide. We used the assisted pull-up so that you could keep your feet straight under you, and you get a full stretch. So imagine dangling off a bridge. Okay, that's what you want to look like at the full stretched position, dangling off a bridge, and then you pull all the way up. We'd pull up to the point you could look over the machine, and then control the negative down. Right, it'd be 2 sets wide, 2 sets medium or closer, and then 2 sets with like the inner grip, which was kind of like a hammer grip. And man, by the time you're done with those 6 sets, I guarantee you that my lat would be spasming 2 hours later when I was driving home from the gym.
Let me add to that, because me and John, and I think Justin ran with us, did that same workout one time. And but at the end of every set, let's say we did 8 reps, you had to hold at the midway point, and then he came behind you and pulled down for like 10 seconds.
Oh God.
That was like, that was brutal. But that was a fun workout.
You just feel like your lats are tearing even without somebody pulling on you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's a really good one. I like that. What else do we have here? Got a bunch more. Okay. Question from Nick over on Patreon. He says, question for the next drugs and stuff or BSG. I have 2 people using cream for TRT and HRT. With both of them, they have labs showing the effectiveness of the cream decreasing over the course of a year. At about 6 months, we double the dose. Then at the last set of labs, one at a year and the other at 9 months, it's showing that testosterone levels are lower than ever. The one at HRT is a woman, and her estradiol cream also seems to be not working, as her estradiol is 22. Test won't read at all below 12. My buddy on TRT's test dropped to 170. Natural, he's like 265.
So that's interesting. Now, well, a couple things pop into my mind. Maybe there's some variation in the dosing of the creams that they're using in terms of the efficacy. Like, are they thinking they're getting a 10 milligram preparation, but due to some compounding issues, they're really getting a 5 milligram preparation, right? Yeah. That's more unlikely, but I just want to throw that out there. Maybe where they're putting the creams is not absorbable for them. And I would also offer a solution. I'd be interested to know why, because I assume these people are doing TRT. They're working with a doctor, because most underground PED purveyors don't offer creams. So they must be working through a clinic. How has the clinic treated this, and why did they not change the protocol? And by change it, I mean, why didn't they add, why didn't they go to like a troche? A lot of HRT companies use like these troches you put in your mouth underneath your tongue.
Oh yeah.
Why aren't they maybe possibly doing injections? And then also suppositories. I've got a lot of women on hormone therapy, and a lot of them see the best results by doing vaginal suppositories, which the lining of the skin is much more absorbable there than rubbing a cream on. So that's kind of be the advice I would give them, to switch up the mode of delivery. I can't really think why their levels have dropped so much. Like that guy, it seems like his testosterone, it's the lowest it ever was at 170. In pre HRT, he was 265, I think it said. That's
yeah,
odd.
It doesn't make sense, does it?
No. Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
All right. Well,
I would talk to a different HRT company, actually, is what I would do.
There you go. Ted says, last episode of BSG, when talking about insulin, Andrew mentioned how being insulin sensitive contributes to an ideal situation for muscle growth. Just wondering if any of you have seen metformin to be enough to help put someone into that type of situation. I realize everyone will respond in a unique way. Just wondering if any of you have seen that happen. Thanks.
I mean, we've gone over, and I think we're in pretty much agreement about our feelings towards metformin. I don't tend to use it with people anymore unless someone says, I have these positive effects and I don't get any of the negative side effects. Negative side effects being the rapid gastric emptying, nausea, and then physically like a flatter kind of, I just call it a flatter look. Like the muscle just doesn't look pumped. That's my experience with it. In terms of improving insulin sensitivity, it still could absolutely be doing that, but then exerting these negative side effects. So, I would tend to use berberine before I would use metformin. And these days I would be more apt to investigate using semaglutide instead of using metformin for insulin sensitivity purposes in this case. Or I would just diet them harder.
Yeah. I mean, really, I think that there's going to be an element of just getting, going through the work of doing the diet. I think that's it, because it takes time. I mean, I've worked with people that, I work with a guy who he did an off season with a very well known coach who works with a lot of pros, a lot of big pros, and the guy pushed him up hard. Okay, the coach pushed him up hard. He got to, I think, his heaviest maybe ever, but he was eating the most food he had ever eaten ever. And he was like, hey, I want to diet down. He's somebody I know. We've known him. We have a good relationship. And we start dieting and we realize, like, hey, this is not working, right? So we pull, the game of, like, you got a lot of food in and you pull it down to what looks like you'll probably start making progress and nothing happens. So you're like, okay, well, let's pull some more, right? Nothing happens. Man, I have a feeling we're going to have to pull a lot, but let's not do that right away. Let's just pull some more and see. Still nothing. Finally, we get to keto. And now he's making progress. And now fast forward a couple months, we're finally at a point where we added carbs back into his pre-workout meal. And now he's lighting up. Like now we're at a point where, we did that for a little while. Things were going good. Now we got another carb meal in and now he's lighting up. But it literally took 2 months or so, maybe more, of really trying to work hard at, just getting into shape before he could get there.
And this is probably because the coach just pushed without any thought towards insulin sensitivity that whole time.
It's just driving lots of food, lots of food. So, but I guess my point is that, and the guy, he's diabetic as well, by the way, type 1. And he's at a point now where, get this, man, he is so insulin sensitive that now that we're adding carbs back in, he's having a hard time dosing his insulin because he needs so little. Yeah. Isn't that crazy? Like he's overshot it to the point where he needed to consume like 70 additional carbs just to catch it and get it back in order.
That reminds me of there's a diabetic female that I worked with for a number of years, and over the time, like any contest prep, it was very expected that we were going to have to pull her basal insulin out, at like 8 or 10 weeks out, just because we get her super insulin sensitive. And then next thing you know, she's just microdosing, her Novolog or Humalog, with the carb meals that we do. And even then, a lot of times she would overshoot, and we're talking she'd take like 2 units of insulin,
right,
and like,
right.
she'd be like, oh, I'm going hypo, like I need to take my glucose tabs, interesting.
Needless to say, after he overshot it and had to carb up, he looked very full, the next check-in.
Mm-hmm. There's something to be said also about sometimes when you hire like a big name coach, they don't pay attention to stuff like that, at least not with like their non, top pro clients, because I think we both probably tend to get a lot of people that they've tried it with like one of these big name coaches that works with so-and-so Olympian. And, this approach might have worked for that person who is an Olympian if you got eyes on them and you're checking them, twice a week. But some of these people, I find like they would send a check in and they wouldn't get a response for 2 weeks from some of these people.
Yeah, I've heard that too. That might be actually the same person, if we may have talked about this before. Off the air. Let's see. Nevin says, how often should one train forearms, assuming they aren't a lagging body part, but would like to bring them up a little? Rep range, favorite exercises. Does general grip strength training build forearm size? Awesome show. ? Awesome show? ? I think he meant exclamation point, but we'll give him that.
Yeah, well, yeah, he's Canadian. We won't we'll hold it against him. So, have you cared about your forearms all that much? Like, has it been a major focus of like the same way calves were at time? Well, you don't train calves, but
dude,
you didn't have to.
I never touched them. I never did, and people commented too because I see them all the time. Because I look down and I never thought they were big, but then people would tell me like, "Oh no, you have really big forearms." I never did any direct work to them ever.
Yeah, I mean, I always program at least one of my bicep exercises is going to have some component that's going to hit the forearms, like some hammer variation or like a reverse curl, while keeping your knuckles, up the whole time, so it's contracted the whole time. But it hasn't been like this major focus. I do remember doing DC. I would definitely do a forearm exercise.
Oh, did you?
Whatever Dante prescribed at the time. Yeah, it was. I mean, because you did your bicep, then you did your forearm, then you did your calves, hams, quads, in that order every time. But yeah, I mean, I'm just reading this question. Assuming they aren't a lagging body part, but would like to bring them up a little. I find the rep ranges kind of like calves. You can do a wide range of rep ranges, and I tend to like the 15 to 20 rep range on them a little bit more, so that I walk away from the exercise feeling like they're bursting full of blood.
Yeah, I can see that.
Like the other day I did arms and I did the reverse curls with a cable that I was just mentioning, one arm at a time. And I'll just go back and forth. I'll do like 20, take 10 seconds or 10 deep breaths. And then I'll go to the other side and maybe I'll get like 18 reps with the same weight. And then the next time I might get like 15 reps, and I like to do that with like those short rest periods. Kind of similar to how I like to train my calves, just get as much blood in there as possible.
Yeah.
Does general grip training build forearm size? Well, I've never seen a professional arm wrestler that doesn't have a wacky forearm, to the point where like it's twice the size of their other forearm, right?
Yeah.
Like, and their hands, their hand muscles grow so much too that it's like it almost looks like a mutant hand. I don't know if you've seen some of these guys up close, but when I used to work at GNC like 25 years ago, we had a professional in Vermont that used to come in and like, oh, what's that character? It's like, I feel like there's an X-Men character that has like one bigger arm than the other. It was like this guy would put out his arm and shake your hand, and your hand, even though I'm a big guy with a decent sized hand, I felt like it would just kind of like disappear in his hand, and the bones would move when he shook my hand. And he wasn't even squeezing. He was just shaking hands,
I know a couple of them, and was it you and I? It was me and someone recently in the last, well, not super recently, the last 6 months, we were talking about it, that those guys run a lot of gear.
I did not know that. It wasn't me.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the arm wrestlers, They run some serious gear, and I know a couple of them, and they'll ask me questions, and they're running gear just like any bodybuilder would, and using BPC for tendonitis in their elbows and all of that. Yeah, those guys hit it hard.
I believe it. I mean, it's a sport that requires, muscle strength and yeah. Wow. I guess I never considered that population. I need to start getting my feelers out there for some new clientele.
Yeah.
Branch out a little bit. The BPC seems like a great idea because we've heard of, who was it? Ian Valère was doing an arm wrestle. He broke his, one of the bones in his arm.
It was his upper. Was it his upper? No, it was his forearm, wasn't it?
It was something, yeah. But I've heard of guys tearing, either an infra or a supraspinatus, or a labrum, or even I think I heard about a bicep tear during an arm wrestle competition. So if you're a bodybuilder and you got big arms, bypass the people that say, "Oh, you want to arm wrestle?" Because actually, one of my pros, she won $1,000 at a bar that she works at in an arm wrestling competition. I think it was like round robin heat or something like that, and I think she was the top female, so she won. All these guys tried to arm wrestle her and put money in the pool, and I think she said she won like $1,000.
Who to beat her, and then they end up losing. Yeah, that's great, man. Yeah. That's fantastic. Yeah. What about Matt Blevins has one for us? He says, how do you fight extreme fatigue while in a big deficit? I'm so tired, but I'm only on 500 to 750 calories a day deficit.
You put one foot in front of the other. I think if you can try to get as much of the hard stuff of the day done early, like your cardio, having that hang over your head sucks to have to do later in the day, especially if you have to do a double session, after your training session or something like that. So yeah, I think getting your cardio out of the way, getting any of the major stuff you have to do earlier in the day when you're probably a little bit more alert, a little bit more awake. Yeah. But really, you kind of just got to go through it, I mean, I know we've talked about this before when you're at that last stage of a contest prep, like maybe 2 weeks out, and you're walking into work and like your legs don't feel like they're going to take another step. You're just like, oh my God, like I'm out of it. Like this is bad.
You're just like jelly and your body feels heavy,
Yeah. And you're like, man, I don't know how I'm going to train today. I don't know how I'm going to, this is when I was personal training. I don't know how I'm going to train these people, like 4 clients back to back, like my legs feel like they're going to collapse at any time. I really just think you got to like mental fortitude. I always try to think about people that in history that have had like it much harder, like we're willingly choosing to eat less than we want to eat and do more calorie expenditure than we want to. I always think about it's just kind of dark, but like, the people that were prisoners in like Nazi Germany or, situations like that are like being forced to do manual labor on like 400 or 500 calories a day. And somehow they were able to.
Yeah. And they were like, they were able to, if I can eat, I thought that like Ethiopians who are starving, it's like, if I can eat chicken 6 times a day, I should be able to get this done. You know what I mean?
That's what I say. Yeah. I try to put it in perspective.
I think too, we're looking at this as our diets. I don't know what Matt's diet is like, because I think that this is where IFFYM could become more of an issue, right? Like when we have the less food we have in the diet, I think the more important the quality of those sources become. If you're using if you're using a shake, that's going to empty out of your system a lot faster, and you might get an insulin spike from that shake, which is then going to drop, and now your blood sugar's lower. So you might not even notice it. Maybe you feel good when you drink the shake, but how do you feel over the next several hours before your next meal? That's where, a lot of times, and I found that where people are like, oh man, my energy is just really low. Well, where specifically? And they're like, well, usually around 3:00, I'm dragging. Be like, well, your last meal was a shake. What if we try some solid food? And it just balances you out. Being able to keep your blood sugar stable, I think, is important. I'll throw that out.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
What about, you ever use L-Tyrosine?
Sure.
I think that always been a boost for me. I was mentioning on It's Just Bodybuilding last episode, I think we were talking about like diet tips, diet hacks. And I used to when I was dieting hard, I would have a cup of green tea, which has a little caffeine in it too, 50 milligrams. And, your EGCGs, for your free radicals and all that, and get some True Nutrition. You can get it anywhere though. L-Tyrosine, big old bag of it was like $5, and
it's nothing.
Take a scoop of it. It's flavorless. I'd mix it in my green tea and drink that. And it's an anti-fatigue agent, is what I would consider it. It helps to stimulate the same receptors that you need for using norepinephrine and dopamine. As well as like Clen and any other stimulant that you're taking. It's going to make those things more effective. So I found that can be helpful. Plus, I know it's really good for your thyroid as well, to ensure that you have good thyroid production, right? So that could be a good tool to also possibly get a little fat loss. And I think it has, for some people, an appetite suppressing effect.
Yep, absolutely. I would even go one step further and add a little bit of lion's mane to that cocktail, and I think you'll kind of snap yourself out of fatigue and poor me, and it'll be like, okay, I can do this. And
now, I never took it.
Whatever the task is.
I've never taken lion's mane. Dave Crossland and I were just talking about it recently. I saw a picture of what it looked like. Have you ever seen what lion's mane looks like?
Oh, it's like a freaky looking mushroom. It's
I'll have to.
It's
I'll
like
pull
a
it
lion's
up.
mane.
Yeah, it really is. But tell me about your experience with it.
I think I learned about it probably from Shelby, like maybe 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And then I contacted him about it and asked him, what his thoughts were and where he was sourcing it from. And so I tried the same brand, and I was just taking it's a company called OM, and it comes in a powder. It kind of tastes a little nutty, but not in a bad way. And you can add it to other drinks, or you could just, put in a scoop of water and drink it. It's kind of like drinking like a nutty, dirt, earthy kind of thing. Yeah, that's the plant, or that's the mushroom. And I found, now my favorite way to take it is with just a little bit of caffeine, because I feel like you get very focused energy and very focused. You're just very mentally acute and very you're very focused. You can get rid of, you can knock down your to-do list, like kind of like Adderall, I guess. But without being all crazy, I felt like that, but yeah, I'll take it on its own too. And just get some mental acuity out of it. And I think it kind of decreases your feelings of, if you're feeling like poor me in a moment, I feel like that kind of goes away. Why do I got to do this extra cardio, or why do I have to eat this chicken without carbs, or whatever it might be? Yeah. Of course, I'm relating everything back to bodybuilding because that's been my experience with it. But it's kind of it just makes everything a little easier, and it doesn't have any negative side effects. So
okay, well, here's the thing: is somebody wrote us on that show about anxiety. And so I guess that there's I think his name is Ryan Russo. He's a YouTuber. He has a whole series about how he got terrible side effects from it. And then Dave was like, I've never heard that. And then his wife was in the background. She was like, yeah, I got that. I got really bad anxiety from lion's mane. So I guess it's not for everyone, but
I guess I would look at what dosing they were doing.
Sure.
And I would also investigate, same way we look at, say, ashwagandha, the different variants like KSM 66, Shodan. There's another one I can't remember off the top of my head now, but a sensoril, is there a particular part of the plant with the active ingredient that your body processes a little differently, the brain processes a little differently, the liver processes a little differently? Is there some aspect to that that might be? But I had great experiences always with the OM brand. I think it stands for one. I don't know what it stands for. It's OM, and they have pills and they have a powder, and I always did the powder. And I will say though, I can understand about the anxiety thing, because I think I told you guys I was experimenting with what's that compound? It was used for Parkinson's over in Europe. Now my brain, I just had it in my head and I lost it. But anyway, I depleted levels of something else in my brain. And when I was trying to counteract them to correct everything, it was a nootropic, right? Okay. It escapes my memory.
One of the popular ones, like NoPep?
A little bit more obscure.
Okay.
Let me think real quick. I'm going to type real quick.
All right.
Well, actually,
I've had some good and bad experience with nootropics, but a good some people are considering L-Tyrosine as a nootropic. I've seen it used in formulas and stuff. I could see it being in that category. Huperzine A is one that I've had good experiences with. We had some old podcasts on the network. If you guys wanted to check it out, it was called A Focus on Nootropics. We were sponsored for a little while by a company called Azoth that made a nootropic product, and there was like getting alpha GPC in there with other compounds like phenylpiracetam, getting the right balances of them. I'm saying names so that maybe one of those might jump out at you.
Yes, you just said it. It was one of the race. It was one of the racetams.
Okay.
There's like 6 of them, right?
Yeah, there's a bunch from what I see.
Yeah, I think it was like piracetam, or it was one of them, right? Okay. And I just went too deep on that stuff. And at the same time, it pulls choline levels down in your brain.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So I had to recorrect that, but the problem, because I wasn't sleeping at all. But then I think I overdid it on the choline, and in my mind, it felt like I was listening to a rock band, not actually hearing noise, but like just that kind of activity in my brain for like 3 days, to where I couldn't go to work. I couldn't sleep. Like it took like a good 3-4 days before I felt like fairly normal again.
Holy crap. Yeah, I think that's what Prady was talking about, was making sure that you combined it with a choline to get because I found too, like I'd get a headache from one nootropic, but then if I combined it with a different one that would make up for that, I would have a better experience,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You got to be careful when you play around with the nootropics, because like I just said, you might be pulling something out of your brain that your brain needs a certain level over that. And then you're trying to recorrect that, and you might overdo it. In my case, you just got to be careful.
You know what? I have, I've got a couple nootropics here, actually. I have some N-acetyl Selank and some N-acetyl Semax. Now, the Selank is great, man. I overdid it the first week. Yeah, and we could wrap the show up here pretty soon, but after this conversation about nootropics, I overdid it the first week. I started using it every day, and I took way too much, and I started feeling like super detached from my life. It wasn't a good feeling. I had to stop, so I cleaned out completely, stopped altogether. Then a month later, occasionally, I would use just 50 micrograms intranasal. It's a nasal spray here. And I'd do a test. I'd be like, okay, it's 10:52. I'm going to reevaluate in 10 minutes at 11:02 and see how productive I feel, because I don't feel real focused right now. And then I'd start working. Every time I did that, I would forget to look at the clock because I was just I was in the zone,
That's awesome. That's the best feeling.
It is. So now I have this N-acetyl Semax. I've only used it once, so the verdict's out. I don't know if it works the same for me, but they're supposed to be pretty similar. Amino Asylum was out of the Selank at the time. By the way, use code THINK, guys, if you want to check it out, get some additional savings, support the podcast. But I've been a big fan of Selank, man, for focus. Like, dude, it's been really good for me.
Yeah, you've got me wanting to try it out now, because I've read a little bit about it, but I've never actually talked to anyone that's used it. So yeah, I'm going to buy some. I'm definitely going to get some now.
Yeah, I know Steve did a video on it a while back, so I watched his video, watched some other videos and stuff, and I'm definitely a big fan. It's good stuff. So if I'll give the Semax a try again here this week. We'll see how my workload is tomorrow. I think it's going to be pretty heavy, so I'll get some Semax in and see let you guys know.
Nice.
So what do you got going on for between now and the next show? The next show is 2 weeks from now. That'll be getting close to next time we record. That'll be getting close to Universe. You're traveling to that, aren't you?
That'll be after the Universe, won't it? Because let's see, if today's
I guess it'll be next weekend. You're right. Next weekend's Universe.
Wow. Yeah, we're
not
coming
this
right up.
weekend, but next weekend.
Yeah. I'm flying up to New Jersey, I think, on that Wednesday. And then, because I've got, it's either Wednesday or Thursday, I've got, 3 girls and 3 guys in the show. Bikini, classic, men's physique, and bodybuilding. And then Nate's going to be there. He's got a couple clients in the show.
That's right.
And
cool.
then he's got someone driving his car down and all of his stuff down to Florida, because he's going to become a Florida resident right down the road from me after that trip. So,
only makes sense. That only makes sense.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that.
You guys are doing a posing clinic together, aren't you? Or clinic, not a posing clinic, but yeah.
just a bodybuilding seminar,
Yeah.
When I do them, what I like to do is kind of feel the audience and ask them, like, what are you interested in learning about today? Because I could give a presentation on something, but it might not help anyone if they have specific questions so I like to go into it being like, hey, what do you guys want to get out of this? We have, 60, 70 shows between the three of us. We have, I've been coaching hundreds, thousands of people. Nate's been coaching for a while now. Rachel's competed in all these years, What are some things what are some topics you want to talk about? And then we'll just dive right in. So
that'll be fun as hell. Where is this? What's going on?
It's going to be up in Burlington, Vermont, South Burlington, Vermont for the NPC Vermont show. So we're going to be just kind of taking off right after prejudging. Competitors are welcome. People that are just watching, people that are just want to show up just to see the seminar, they can walk in. It's free.
That's free. Cool.
Just kind of a service we're doing. I've sponsored the Vermont show for a number of years now. Nate's was the guest poser last year, and he's won the Vermont show. I've done the show a bunch of times.
That's cool.
So it's just, I made a post saying I think I've been to every single one except 2021 for John Meadows' funeral, dating back to I think 2001 or maybe even before that, maybe 1999. That's cool, man. Yeah, because it was the one show I knew about in my community or in my area, over the years before I had a car or even I'd hitch a ride with somebody,
That's the Michigan State Championships has been for me. I'm lucky that it's close to my home and stuff. So it's that's my got a lot of feels for that one. That one and I guess Central States too. Both of those two shows are my jam.
Are those, how many shows do they have? They have Michigan's.
Michigan is a bunch now, man. We've got a bunch. And then Fuwad's doing a pro show here in April. You should get, I saw that. You should get Nate out here.
In April, if it works out health-wise, then absolutely, because, he's, we're doing Vancouver and then, I'm not sure where his head's at. We'll see. We'll have to see where he's at because he's been dieting for, a long time now. Yeah. I think he feels pretty good, though. I think we've got everything. We're in a good place. Food's high. Things are going well. We'll see where his head's at. See if we can do a cruise and then get healthy and then get ready for the
depending
Michigan.
on what he needs, right? That'd be cool, though. That'd be fun. Yeah. Get you guys out here.
It would be fun.
Take you to Highland Park, Detroit Powerhouse, the first powerhouse ever. You guys would dig that gym. It's pretty cool.
That would be cool. Yeah, that would be cool for sure.
Maybe we'll get Drea to come out and hang out with us. That'd be cool. That'd be fun. I'm going to shoot video with her.
We don't need people making us look small.
I'm shooting video with her for Mutant this Saturday.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. I mentioned to her that I knew you, that we did the podcast together, and she had nothing but great things to say about you too. When I met her at New York Pro.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
She was hanging out in the room where Nate was getting his tan done. And they were trying to set up a deal to have her fly out to Arizona, I think, to Dennis James's place to have this woman do Andrew's tan and maybe one of his other clients or people that he helps out.
That's right.
For I think the Rising Phoenix show. So
that's right.
Yeah. Very nice woman.
That's cool. Yeah, no, man. She's really legit too. That's who who you got. That's who she is with everybody. And it's who she was before she was Miss Olympia too. That's really just her personality.
I believe it 100%. Yeah. Cool.
All right. Well, let's wrap this thing up. Guys, if you want to get into any coaching with either of us, feel free to reach out. Skip's not here with us, so don't go to teamskip.com. We don't want you to. No, go to teamskip.com. Get some coaching from Skip. You can go to bodyberry.com to reach out to Andrew. Hit me up, mcnallydiets@gmail.com. I'll send you all my information about different options, stuff like that. We can go from there. And, of course, check out our sponsors, truenutrition.com. Use our code THINK. We talked about some of their stuff today. And, of course, what else do we have here? Supplementsource.ca. Lots of great deals you get week to week. And, of course, Patreon. You guys are awesome. A lot of the questions we had today were from Patreon. Appreciate all the support you guys are giving us, and thank you for being there to keep this thing running. And anything else, Andrew, that we need to tell everybody before we left?
If anyone has positive experiences with IGF LR3, the topic we led off with, please let us know your dosing protocol, how you ran it, and what you saw out of it. I'm always willing to learn more. I think people think that coaches sometimes have an attitude of it's my way or the highway. I'm continuously always ready to learn, especially about compounds that maybe I've shut the door on. Maybe there's a different use for them, a different application. So absolutely leave a comment.
Sounds good. All right, guys. We'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody in the live stream. You guys are awesome.
The word true, it's very simple. It's only 4 letters, but it's got a vast meaning. It's about legitimacy. This has to be the real deal. My whole philosophy in everything in life is progression. If I'm not progressing, I am frustrated. You know, back in the 90s, I was known as the guy who put muscle mass on people who were stuck. There were things happening in the industry that weren't good. And in April of 2003, Doug and I started True Nutrition. We put the money into the jug, into the bag. That's where the money goes. We're in lab coats. We're in the back. We're manufacturing this stuff. So if it's not worthy enough for me, it's not worthy enough for my business partner, it's not worthy for you. Whether you're a bodybuilder, a triathlete, whoever you are, whatever your goal is, it is customized to you. I developed my reputation as a no BS kind of guy. I'm Dante Trudell, half owner of True Nutrition.